Hi, we're reading The Thing About Oliver, Chapter 20. Ollie is still missing. I try not to look at the clock, but all I can hear is the sound of it ticking. As the seconds, minutes, hours pass by, the panic in my chest grows. Why haven't they found him yet? Senior Constable Smith tells us there are lots of officers on the ground looking for Oliver and that the helicopter has a special camera that can see in the dark. She says there are boats going up and down the river searching for him too. Constable Taylor tells us that they've done a call out to the local media and that Oliver's photo should be all over the TV and internet by now. But even with all of that, they still haven't actually found him. And what if they don't? A huge lump arises in my throat. It's my fault. I was the one who ran off because of the stupid journal. I was the one who left the door open. If only I had turned around when I heard the owl hooting, I would have seen him. I would have taken him back inside. I can't stand this anymore. Why don't we just go out there and look for him ourselves? Aunt Janine shakes her head. The police are experts when it comes to missing people, Tilly. They know what they are doing. But what if he hears me or Mum? Then I stop. Oliver could be too far away from it to hear our voices. And even if he did hear us, he didn't like this shouting of any kind. Besides, Mum's new hairstyle would spook him. The phone rings and Mum flies off the lounge. We still hold our breath, but it's only Mum's old boss from the bakery who had heard that Ollie is missing. No, they haven't found him yet, Mum's voice wavers. Suddenly she lets out a wail, then sends a shiver down my spine. Senior Constable Smith gently takes the phone from her and Aunt Janine and guides Mum back to the lounge. She wraps her arm around Mum as she wails, rocking her, telling her it's going to be all right. They'll find Oliver. But her face is as white as Mum's. Senior Constable Smith and Constable Taylor are standing across the room, talking in hushed voices. I strain my ears to hear them over the sound of Mum sobbing. Constable Taylor's voice is low, but I catch the word divers. I frown. What on earth could they be talking about? Scuba diving? Suddenly my stomach lurches. They are not talking about the Great Barrier Reef. They're talking about searching the river. The room starts to spin. I feel like I'm going to be sick. Then Constable Taylor says something about a dog squad. The words are out of my mouth before I can stop them. But Oliver is terrified of dogs. Both officers stop talking and look at me. So do Mum and Aunt Janine. Don't worry, Constable Taylor assures all of us. The dogs are on leads and the handlers will be keeping them well under control. I shake my head. Even hearing a dog bark is enough to make Ollie freak out. Panic flashes across Mum's face. What if he runs? Both officers glance at each other. I can tell you when they're thinking that their team of dogs might actually be driving Oliver further away from home. I turn to Senior Constable Smith. Will they shout his name? She looks at me and nods. Yes, they will. I put my head in my hands. He won't respond to his name, and he hates shouting. The chopper will frighten him too. So will the sound of the sirens. I imagine him crouched down with his arms around his head, desperately trying to block out the noise. Senior Constable Smith turns to Constable Taylor. Call Senior Sergeant Fawcett. Sergeant Fawcett sits down and pulls out his notebook. I grit my teeth. We haven't got time to play 1,000 questions again. We need to find Ollie. Quickly, I tell him what I told Senior Constable Smith and Constable Taylor. I want to tell you all the other things about Ollie too. How he likes songs and water and the noise of the rubbish truck, but I know there isn't time. Senior Sergeant Fawcett is scribbling like mad. He can hardly keep up with me. He looks up at Mum and thinks it's likely he will run. Mum shakes her head. I know, I suppose he could if he's frightened enough. I think back to the waiting room in the city when Ollie heard the dog barking. He crouched down low with his arms over his head, trying to block out the sound. He does the same thing when he sees a dog in the street. I clear my throat. I don't think so. When Ollie's afraid, he wraps his arms around his head and crouches down low. I think he's more likely to hide somewhere. Mum looks at me in surprise. You're right, I should know that. I'm sorry, I just can't think straight. What with Her voice breaks into a sob. It's okay, Mum, I hug her reassuring. That's what we are all here for, to help. Aunt Janine presses my shoulder. We sure are. Thank you. That's valuable information. Sergeant Senior Fawcett stands up. From what you told me, it seems likely that Oliver is hiding somewhere nearby. If we can eliminate some of the noise, he might feel safe enough to come out on his own. I'm going to make some calls and I'll be out in the hall if you need me. I'm glad that what I told him will help with the search, but even if they call the dog squad off, the chopper and all the shouting and sirens will probably scare Ollie, and he'd be too afraid to come out from wherever he's hiding. And he could be hiding anywhere. The police might be experts when it comes to missing people, but they are not experts when it comes to Ollie. We are. I picture my brother's face, pale and smooth, with his eyes so blue and so deep, I could never touch the bottom. I had to try to do that, to reach him. If Ollie and the other noises stopped, that would make him want to come out again. Mum blows her nose loudly. Constable Taylor turns to me. Is there a bin in the kitchen, Tilly? He asks, nodding from the growing pile of tissues by Mum's feet. For the rubbish. I stare at him for a moment, then I leap to my feet, startling Mum and Aunt Janine. Constable Taylor looks worried. Tilly, he calls after me. Are you all right? But I'm already out the door. I haven't got time to explain. I need to speak to Senior Sergeant Fawcett. A rubbish truck. Senior Sergeant Fawcett frowns. I'm not sure I understand what you mean, Tilly. I explain to him again, and this time it comes out a lot clearer. Waiting for a rubbish truck every Saturday is one of Ollie's favourite things to do. He knows the sound of it by heart. He hears them long before we do. If he hears a rubbish truck going up and down the street, he might come out from wherever he's hiding. Senior Sergeant Smith looks doubtful. What if he's too far away to hear it? That is what I'm afraid of. But then I remember what Aunt Janine said to me at the shopping centre. I have to think positive. I swallow hard. I know my brother, and he's more likely to hide than run. You said to yourself, in the most cases, kids don't stray too far from home. Ollie's hearing is better than anyone. If he's nearby, he will hear the rubbish truck. And if he can hear the rubbish truck, I know he will come out to see it. It's an interesting idea, Tilly, but I hear a noise behind me and turn around. Mum has followed me out the hall and heard every word. Her cheeks are strained with tears, but her eyes are shining. No, Senior Sergeant, it's a brilliant idea. And that's the end of chapter 20.